Gather round, horror hounds. Tonight, we dive into the foggy, fear-filled streets of the city with Greg, your not-so-average Uber driver. Greg's the type of guy who could watch The Exorcist and call it a comedy, so you know this one's going to be good. It's a night thick with fog, the kind where even Jason Voorhees might call it quits and stay home. Greg's driving his usual late shift, grumbling about his life choices. His Uber app pings, new passenger, Josephine. He's thinking, great, just what I need. Another late-night philosopher or a drunk off their rocker. Greg pulls up to the curb and spots Josephine. She's draped in vintage clothes, looking like she stepped out of a 1920s film noir. Her eyes are distant, like she's watching a silent movie only she can see. She gets in and says, "Take me to 66 Nevermore Lane." Greg, ever the sarcastic skeptic, responds in his mind, "What, Dracula's summer cottage was booked?" "Sure thing, lady. Buckle up." But off they go. As they cruise through the fog-choked streets, Josephine starts spinning tales of the city's haunted past. She shares tales of the old theatre where actors still perform even after death, the abandoned asylum where the screams of patients still echo, and the ghostly hitchhikers who vanish when they reach their destination. Greg chuckles internally. Oh, really? So, like, every Starbucks is haunted by the spirits of hipsters past, seeking their lost lattes, he thinks to himself, but Josephine continues, undeterred by his internal sarcasm. Suddenly, the radio flickers and plays static, then switches to an old-timey song, the kind of melody that makes your skin crawl and your heart race. Greg fiddles with the radio, his usual bravado starting to wane. Must be a glitch, he thinks nervously. Or maybe the ghost of FM radio trying to make a comeback. Josephine's stories get darker, more intense. She talks about a woman who died in a car accident, forever seeking a ride. Greg laughs it off in his mind again. Yeah, I bet she's stuck trying to get to the afterlife, but keeps getting 5-star reviews holding her back. They pass by an old, decrepit house. The car's lights flicker, casting eerie shadows that dance across the walls. Greg's laughter fades as the atmosphere grows more oppressive, like the fog is trying to smother the life out of the city. Okay, seriously, this is like a bad episode of The Twilight Zone. Just get through this ride and you can go home and forget it ever happened, he reassures himself. Josephine keeps talking, her voice steady, almost hypnotic. She describes a ghostly figure that haunts the city's graveyard, appearing to those who are destined to die soon. Greg's grip on the steering wheel tightens, his knuckles white. Sounds like every ex-girlfriend I've ever had, he jokes to himself, trying to keep his cool. They drive deeper into the city, the fog growing thicker, the streets more deserted. The buildings loom like silent sentinels, watching, waiting. Greg starts to feel like he's driving into another world, a place where the living don't belong. Cue the dramatic music.
So grab your buddies, let's meet at the pier.
Oh wait, that's just my Spotify playlist. They finally arrive at their destination, an old cemetery shrouded in mist, the tombstones jutting out like broken teeth. Josephine points to a spot ahead and says, "Just here, Greg." Greg stops the car and turns to ask if she's sure, but before he can speak, Josephine vanishes. One moment she's there, the next she's gone, leaving behind an old photograph on the seat. Holy she's gone, Greg thinks, wide-eyed. He picks up the photograph. It's a picture of Josephine from the 1920s, standing next to a car remarkably similar to his. Greg's bravado crumbles, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. Determined to get answers, Greg drives to the local library a place he hasn't visited since he was forced to do a book report in high school. He digs into dusty archives, his fingers trembling as he flips through old newspapers. Let's see. Josephine, car accident, 1920, bingo, right where I picked her up. Well, this is just peachy, he mutters to himself, trying to shake off the growing fear. He finds it. Josephine's tragic accident, detailed in yellowed, brittle newsprint. She was a young woman, full of life, taken too soon by a reckless driver. The photograph he holds matches the one in the paper. She was real, and now she's a part of his reality. And by the way, if you think this is going to get all happy and Disney-like, think again. We're knee-deep in Shyamalan territory now. Back in his car, Greg looks at the photograph, a chill running down his spine. He starts the car, determined to shake off the fear, but the radio flickers on again with that old-timey song, as if mocking him. All right, Josephine, let's get one thing straight. You stay in the past, and I'll stick to avoiding ghost passengers. Deal? He thinks, gripping the wheel. Days pass, but Greg can't shake the feeling of being watched. He starts seeing shadows in his rearview mirror, hearing whispers in the dead of night. His friends laugh it off, telling him he's been working too hard. But Greg knows better. I'm telling you, man, this wasn't just some weird dream. She was real. And now it's like she's following me. He confides to a friend. Dude, you need a vacation. Or maybe lay off the horror movies for a while. His friend laughs. But the signs keep coming. His car radio switches to that old-timey song at random times. He finds the photograph of Josephine in places he knows he didn't leave it. On his dashboard, his nightstand, even his pocket. Yeah, real Houdini-level creepy. Greg decides to dig deeper. He visits the cemetery again, this time in daylight. The fog is still thick, but the daylight gives him a false sense of security. He walks among the tombstones, searching for any sign of Josephine. He finds her grave, a modest stone with her name, dates, and a simple epitaph. Beloved daughter, lost too soon. Greg feels a pang of guilt, a connection he can't explain. He kneels, placing the photograph by the stone. I'm sorry, Josephine. I didn't believe. I didn't know. He whispers softly. Cue the violins and emotional montage. Oh, wait. That's just my feels acting up. As he stands, the air grows colder, the fog thickening around him. He hears a whisper, barely audible, carried by the wind. Thank you, Greg. Josephine's voice echoes softly. Greg spins around, but there's no one there, just the silent graves and the oppressive fog. He returns to his car, the weight of the encounter pressing down on him. He starts the engine, the old-timey song playing softly once more. All right, that's enough ghost stories for a lifetime, he mutters. But the experiences don't end there. Greg notices changes in himself. He's more cautious, more aware of the world around him. He takes detours to avoid certain streets, listens for whispers in the wind. He even starts carrying salt and sage just in case. Yes, he's become the supernatural brothers all in one. One night, he picks up another late-night fare. The passenger, an older gentleman, gets in and gives an address. As they drive, the man starts talking about the city's haunted history. Greg feels a sense of déjà vu, but this time he listens more carefully. The man talks about the same old theater, the asylum, and the hitchhikers. Greg interrupts, asking if he's heard of Josephine. The man pauses, then nods. Josephine, the ghost who seeks a ride? She's a legend around here. Why do you ask? Greg explains his encounter, the photograph, the cemetery. The man listens intently, then tells Greg about an old ritual to help restless spirits find peace. Intrigued, Greg decides to give it a try. He gathers the necessary items, a white candle, some salt, and the photograph of Josephine. He returns to the cemetery at midnight, the fog thicker than ever. He sets up the candle and salt around Josephine's grave, holding the photograph in his hands. He lights the candle and begins the ritual, following the man's instructions. The air grows colder, the fog swirling around him like a living entity. Greg feels a presence, a sense of being watched. He focuses, reciting the words to help Josephine find peace. Suddenly the fog parts, and Greg sees Josephine standing before him, looking more real than ever. She smiles, a sad, wistful smile, and reaches out to touch his hand. "Thank you, Greg," she whispers, her voice like a soft breeze. You'd think she'd give a guy a heads up or a thanks, bro. But nope. Ghosts are just as cryptic as Yoda sometimes. Greg watches as Josephine's form starts to fade, the fog swallowing her up once more. He feels a sense of closure, a weight lifted from his shoulders. He smiles, feeling a sense of peace he hasn't felt in a long time. "You're welcome, Josephine. Rest in peace," he whispers softly. As he leaves the cemetery, the fog begins to lift, the city bathed in the soft glow of dawn. Greg climbs into his car, feeling lighter, freer than he has in weeks. He starts the engine, the radio playing his favorite song for the first time in what feels like forever. He drives off into the sunrise, ready to face whatever the world throws at him. And as for Josephine, well, let's just say she finally found the peace she'd been searching for all those years. As for Greg, he's still driving his late-night shifts, still cracking jokes and dodging ghostly passengers. But now he's got a newfound respect for the supernatural. And who knows, maybe he'll even start believing in ghosts. Or maybe not. Hey, a guy can dream, right? So what's the moral of our little ghost story, kiddies? Well, it's simple. Never underestimate the power of a good scare. And always tip your Uber driver, especially if they've just helped a restless spirit find peace. Who knows? It might just save your soul. And hey, if this little ghostly joyride tickled your funny bone and left you craving more, do us a solid, will ya? Smash that like button like it owes you money. Share this tale faster than a meme goes viral. And subscribe quicker than you can say, "I ain't afraid of no ghost." Because let's face it, folks, in a world full of spooky specters and paranormal pandemonium, you gotta stick together like the Scooby Gang at a haunted amusement park. So, until our next bone-chilling rendezvous, keep your popcorn buttered, your flashlight handy, and your sarcasm level at maximum. After all, you never know when the next ghostly adventure might come knocking at your door. Toodles. Hello there, dear viewers. Allow me to introduce myself, your sardonic host for this macabre odyssey into the deepest recesses of madness and depravity. Think of me as an unholy amalgamation of Rod Serling and Beelzebub himself, here to narrate the unraveling sanity of two poor, unfortunate souls. Now I know what you're thinking. You seem like such a trustworthy devil. Surely this tale can't be that twisted. Oh, ye of little faith. You see those two pitiful mortals frozen in the frame? The ginger lass with eyes growing wider than saucers from utter horror, and her bespectacled companion whose countenance suggests he's mere moments away from disgracing those khakis? Meet Wendy and Roy, a vlogging duo whose unquenchable thirst for viral fame landed them in a predicament so mind-shatteringly disturbing, it would make even the most grizzled crypt keeper discard his reaping robes in fright. I can sense the confusion wafting through the ether already. How could the misadventures of two dime-a-dozen content creators possibly warrant such an ominous introduction? I'm glad you asked, dear viewer. You see, the terrors that await make the Necronomicon read like a picture book aimed at illiterate toddlers. We're going for a ride that'll make Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas look like a sunny Pixar flick in comparison. So buckle up, renew your life insurance policy, and maybe have the number for an exorcist on hand, because this is one hell of a long, tumultuous descent. It all started with their vlog, one of those migraine-inducing digital video repositories where every inane, vapid moment of their lives is painstakingly documented with all the production value of a Zack Snyder fever dream. Wendy and Roy, ever the enterprising little clickbait peddlers, thought venturing deep into the bowels of an abandoned carnival would be a surefire way to drive up those engagement numbers. Because clearly their ethos was, why beg viewers to like and smash that subscribe button when you can beg malevolent entities to like and smash your mortal souls instead? From the moment they breached those neon-tagged "Do Not Enter" barriers with all the tact and self-preservation instincts of a couple of jackass rejects, the miasmic atmosphere around them congealed into a fog thicker than the densest of Christopher Nolan's plotlines. Reality itself began bending, contorting, flickering in and out of Euclidean geometry like a defective projector bulb. The funhouse hall of mirrors they so brazenly waded into should have been their first massive existential red flag. Reflections so hideously twisted and malformed, they made the creepiest simulacra from Black Mirror look like a Rankin-based stop-motion wet dream in comparison. But nay, Wendy and Roy pressed steadfastly onward in their relentless pursuit of monetizable YouTube metrics and brand synergy. That's when they encountered him, Peter the Ringmaster, a being so utterly, incomprehensibly deranged and nightmarish in his very essence that he made Pennywise the dancing clown look like a slapstick birthday party performer hired to entertain rural Iowan children. With a perpetual carrion grin slashed from canthus to canthus like a botched Glasgow smile, and piercing voids where eyes should be, their first soul-withering glimpse of Peter was akin to making accidental ocular contact with the original formless evil itself. And so began their harrowing descent into the dankest realms of pan-dimensional psychosis and unfathomable perdition. A realm where human anatomy is sculpted into grotesque, surrealistic abominations that would prompt the entire Slipknot ensemble to preemptively vomit their vertebral slugs. Where ghostly carnies, hawk misery curios, and accursed thrill rides lacking even the most perfunctory safeguards. A plane of existence where the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory tunnel sequence plays on an endless, inescapable loop interlaced with subliminal pausics designed to reduce viewers into drooling otherminds. Just when you think the dread and terror have peaked, that not even Lovecraftian geometries themselves could ratchet up the visceral anguish anymore, we get the true pièce de resistance plopped into our proverbial laps. You see, this macabre realm of dark carny supremacy, it's ruled over and manifested by none other than Wendy and Roy's own thought-to-be late uncle, Peter, a malignant, willful revenant who sultrily transcended the veil between realities to eternally torture his ungrateful progeny. From thence onward, the lines between reality, delirium, and virtual nightmare space become so profoundly blurred, so indistinguishable, that by video's end, you'll be left doubting whether you, the viewer, were not somehow psychically inculcated into being a member of Wendy and Roy's terrified vlog crew as well. Blood will have been senselessly spilled. Human forms will have been disturbingly mutilated and distended beyond recognition. Core personas sundered, leaking precious anime into the ravenous metaverse. And worst of all, knowing glances will have been shared with the unblinking lens, taunting you to engage more with the sheer cosmic dread by liking, smashing that bell, and selling your immortal soul to the viewership algorithm. So sleep well tonight, dear viewers, if you can still find solace in something as fleeting and fragile as non-REM slumber. But perhaps avoid those twisted carnival mirrors, for one can never truly know what hungering cyclopean horrors await on the other side of the looking glass. The dark carnival is always hiring, always replenishing its sideshow attractions from the ranks of overly curious viewers such as yourselves. Cheerio! All right, you twisted little trappers of terror, gather round and let your blackened souls drink in this spine-tingling tale, for the demented know no fear. Who am I kidding? Of course I'm terrified. You really think someone with my ruggedly debonair looks and cutting wit doesn't encounter the most depraved of horrors on the daily? Why, just last Tuesday, some jackaninnies on TikTok tried to convince me that the Babadook was just an eccentric gentleman expressing himself through artful burlesque. Please. That shrieking birth of Beelzebub himself is the stuff that turns hardened horror vets like myself into drooling agoraphobes. But I digress. This tale of terror I'm about to decant upon your warped minds makes the Babadook look like a chipper dancing raisin. You'd better have your business affairs in order, because this one's been aged to pant-browning perfection. You're definitely going to want to ready those adult diapers and emotional support plushies, my friends. Because once you hear what depths of fear await, you'll be apoplectic that you ever doubted the darkness dwelling within us all. So buckle up, Gorgools. The nightmare is just beginning. Tara loved ripping horror theories a new one, like she was Freddy freaking Krueger, slashing through a fresh batch of unsuspecting teenagers at Camp Bloodbath. Meanwhile, Neil thought anything supernatural was about as real as an honest politician. These mismatched podcasters spent their lives obliterating the unholy and wrecking the wicked with their sick burns. Then, one fateful All Hallows Eve, a listener sent in a wild theory about a dimensional rift straight out of the depths of Arlier. Well, as the urban legend decimators they are, Tara and Neil shoved that baby into their Overcast episode like Jonas freaking Salk, loading a syringe to inject some truth serum into the anti-vax crowd. But this was no ordinary podcast segment. Like a cursed vinyl, its playback opened a portal, bridging our world to the terrifying dimension of limitless torment. Let's peek into the Dolt, shall we? First up, the unsuspecting duo found themselves trapped in a classic 80s slasher scene, stalked by a hockey mask-wearing psycho who'd make Jason Voorhees say, yikes. With only Neil's oversized Scream costume to hide in, they hugged each other tighter than that scratchy material hugs a contoured beer gut. Then, a quick plummet into the cinematic abyss transported them to a nightmarish rendition of the Upside Down, where the Demogorgons were sporting bedazzled floss and vape rigs for slaying in style. Thank quarantine for giving those beasts time to develop next-level skills. After barely escaping with a few singed Overcast logos, they crash-landed amidst a torrent of zombies that could have passed as Neil's extended family at their last reunion. Using his uncanny chameleon skills, he blended in perfectly while Tara had to seek refuge on her Weddington Nails promo Instagram account. With each realm they traversed, the scenery shapeshifted from your standard B-movie schlock to photorealistic abominations that'd make the SCP Foundation say, nah, this one's a pass. One scene had them surrounded by disgustingly exquisite body horror, unlike anything witnessed outside that one seedy adults-only forum Tara may or may not frequent. Each time they started to question their reality, a new fresh hell would spawn before them with nary a breadcrumb to find their way home. They dove into the maw of eldritch cosmic deities that made Cthulhu look like a beanie baby designed for expectant dads at their man cave gender reveals. Portals erupted with hellish spawn like the collectors were Funko Pop fanatics, chillingly hoarding exclusives. Tara clutched Neil tighter than his waistband clings to his dad bod, praying her snark was sharpened enough to cut back through the veil to their world. But the snark was no match for such deeply unsettling terrors. At their wits' end, cowering amidst a scene of primordial chaos too cerebral, shatteringly incomprehensible to depict, a single beacon shone through the madness. Neil's beloved podcast microphone. When all hope seemed lost, the words of the listener who sent that fateful theory echoed through Tara's mind. If you're ever trapped in a never-ending horror show, just do what you do best. Wax intellectual until your smug musings make the demons flee from the auditory torture. Trembling, Tara grabbed the mic and, staring defiantly into the maw of oblivion, bellowed, "Actually, the fear of the unknown stems from mankind's debilitating insecurities about our own insignificance within the grandeur of an unfathomably vast cosmos." Trembling, Tara grabbed the mic and, staring defiantly into the maw of oblivion, bellowed, "Actually, the fear of the unknown stems from mankind's debilitating insecurities about our own insignificance within the grandeur of an unfathomably vast cosmos." As Tara continued her Cimmerian sermon on the human condition, a low rumble grew within the abyss, gnarls of paradoxical eldritch geometries beginning to unravel in torment. Like specters fleeing the sacrilegious tolling of a cosmic bell, the terrors began to recede. Tara rambled further on nihilistic perspectives, deconstructions of existentialist theory, and more intellectual posturing, just pretentious enough to shake the very foundations of that dread realm and tear an escape hatch back to their studio. Phew! That brings us back from the insanity of their harrowing journey. So in the end, the masters of the horror, dissected, conquered the forces of terror itself through an ironically dreadful experience. The torture of Tara's insufferably smug verbal diarrhea. Talk about a deliverance. I guess there really is power in snark after all, eh? Now, if you'll pardon my terrible story joke, I'd like to invite you to subscribe, smash that like button, and victimize yourself for more pants-scaringly ghoulish entertainment like this. Remain wicked horror aficionados.